everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. Today, I am joined by Farzana Doctor, who is the author of The Beauty of Us. And this book is definitely, I don't want to say it's a thriller, but it's definitely makes me wonder if there could be a movie adaptation of this, just because it definitely has some twisted
Mhm.
turns.
Put that out into the universe. We want that.
Yes, yes. So why don't you tell our listening, viewing audience, just before we get into the book, just a little bit about you, where you're located, all of those things that they may not be able to figure out from the book.
Yeah. So I live in Toronto, Canada. And in the mornings, I'm a writer. I've written 7 books. This is my seventh. I mostly write fiction, but I also write poetry. And I've written also a self-care, self-help book for caregivers and activists and helping professionals. In the afternoon, I am a helping professional. I'm a psychotherapist. So I split my time between those two jobs.
I love how you have prioritized your schedule. And I've actually done the same thing where I don't schedule any appointments until I'm not a psychotherapist. So just by the way, um, I don't really schedule any appointments until 12 p.m. Chicago time. Every day at 10 o'clock, I go to water aerobics, and it's really, as you know, in your 50s, your body starts to do things. But it's that part of the day is really Lisa time,
Mhm.
where I can just take care of my body, my mind, my spirit. Sometimes I'm in the pool doing the little moves and I close my eyes and I'm just like, thank you, God, for being alive. And it really helps level set my day. And I
Yeah.
had to flip life because life was controlling me. And I'm like, I want to live to be 100.
Yeah. Yeah. Knock on wood. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you
I,
know what?
I I like writing in the morning just because it is like the quieter time. And I too like to throw in a little bit of exercise in the morning as well, because you can't be just like sitting and writing the whole morning. Yeah, I agree. Once you get to this age, you prioritize balance a little bit more.
And you know what I wish that my mother and aunts, when they used to say to me, "You just work so hard, you work so hard." They just kept saying you work so hard, but they never took it a step further and said, you should exercise in the morning consistently, right? Just those things that I think, if you don't do, they catch up with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So 7 books. I That is so exciting. I love it. So
Mhm.
I've only written, well, 2 books. One is a compilation, that I decided to undertake because I wanted to help others tell their story. So
Hmm.
less about me writing and more about getting others to tell their story. And so I think that's so important because so many people have a story in them and
Yeah.
they don't ever tell it, and you have to tell it.
Yes. Yeah, and that's how I started writing, really. I didn't think that I was gonna be writing a book, but I ended up going to one of those continuing ed courses in university, called Writing the Novel, because I liked reading novels, and that's how I ended up writing the first draft of the first chapter of the first novel was in one of those courses because someone was a bit of a facilitator for that, maybe the way you are for other people.
I love it. So, writer by day, psychotherapist by night or afternoon, evening.
Afternoon.
So, how has your work influenced your book writing?
Well, I think mostly it's congruent in the sense that I feel like I am swimming in emotions all the time. I'm a sensitive person, but then, there's a lot of emotions in the psychotherapy work. And when you're writing characters, you're kind of like also waiting for these characters to kind of reveal their emotions to you. So I think mostly it's just helped me to deepen how I write emotions. Also, the psychotherapy is a job I like. And so many authors I know have to kind of like pull together lots of odd jobs to be able to support themselves as writers because, well, that's just the reality. And so they sometimes have other jobs they don't like. So I'm just really grateful that I have a part-time job that I feel is meaningful and I really like. And that gives me the stability if things don't work out with the book sales.
Absolutely. And I was doing some research recently about, on average, how many books an author sells. And so that has kind of like lit a fire under me for
Mm,
my book that I'm going to release next year, of setting that goal of how do I surpass what is typically sold for a book. And I think one of the challenges is, so I went through a publisher, which is a smaller publisher, right? And so it's not like one of the big publishers, like, how politicians are in office, they leave office and they write a book, or
mhm.
athletes, they retire and they write a book and they just get this worldwide distribution. It just works out that way for them.
Yeah.
But for us, we have to fight to get that worldwide distribution, which is possible.
Yes.
It just takes some work.
It's like any industry. There's going to be like maybe 2% who end up exploding like that. And then there's a lot of people kind of in the messy middle, and then some people who really don't do very well. Um, it is an industry that I think people don't realize that authors, if you're going with a standard publisher, authors are earning about 10% of the list price of a book. And I also wonder why people don't buy more books to support the artists. Those are questions I have. But I mean, I love doing it. It's a mission for me. I really like presenting, good and fun stories that also have deeper meaning in them.
Absolutely. And I think one of the reasons, and I was just chatting with another author about this, I grew up in a time where my father took me to the library, um, basically so we would not get in trouble, right? And so early on, I developed a love for reading. And then some point in life, I lost that love, desire, because life was just doing what life does. And probably about 10 years ago, I reignited my passion, but I also kind of shifted what I was reading. I At first I was reading, the spicy the spicy books. And so I no longer really read those. I really read books that speak to my mind, my body, and my soul, because I feel like on this side of 50, I should be feeding into it um, things that I could use to help others, right? Because I
Oh,
want to be able to give back to people, especially the people who, and I've heard people say this, I just don't like reading.
right.
But everything in life requires you to read.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's dig into the book a little bit.
Okay.
We don't want to tell them everything about the
Sure.
book, but why don't you just tell our listening, viewing audience very high level about the book? And then also, I just asked this other author this, does this book represent your life or is it you let your imaginations
Sure.
take hold of the pencil?
Yeah. Well, so this is a book told in through three perspectives. One is 15-year-old Zahabia, who is a new girl at the boarding school, which is the setting. I love settings that are closed settings because fun things happen in them. This boarding school is also in the 1980s. So Zahabia is one of the characters. She's a new girl at the school, very awkward. Then there is Lisa, who is a bit of a bully, one of the popular girls, 17. She's guarding a very big secret about her life. And then The third character is a newbie teacher in her early 20s who comes to replace the French teacher who has died 2 weeks before. And that character ends up seeing the ghost of that deceased teacher. So those are the three main characters. Um, so um, the main characters are all BIPOC characters, Black, Indigenous, people of color characters, group of girls who solve a mystery. They solve a mystery of what's going on with Lisa and try to help her out. It was fun to write the 80s. So the part that is me, to answer that question, most of this book is fiction. However, when I was 15 years old, things were going pretty bad in my family. We had a lot of tension. And my escape plan, other kids just run away, but my escape plan, because I had heard about, I think a lot of kids hear about boarding schools as this romantic concept. So I went to my public library and I looked in the yellow pages for boarding schools because I wanted an escape plan to the tension in my family. And I looked up all of the boarding schools in my province. I sent off for applications. I got interviews at a couple, and then I got into one of them. I did all of this secretly. Finally, I told my father when I got an acceptance. He was super angry and shocked. And in the end, he allowed it after a lot of lobbying and the help intervention of an aunt. He allowed me to go. It was the weirdest year of my life. In some ways, it was wonderful that I grew up in a very small white town. And then I went to this boarding school, which was a boarding school that attracted a lot of international students. So suddenly I was in a school with a lot of brown and Black kids, and I was just so excited to be there. So that was the good part. But the hard part of it was that it was a very controlling environment where I had so much more freedom at home, honestly. And there was a lot of dysfunction happening in the lives. I thought that things were bad in my family, but after leaving the school, I really had a perspective that other people had had much more difficult family situations. So the part that is me is the backstory for Zahabia. She that's how she gets to the school, and then how she deals with friends and bullying and awkwardness and relationships, and then that mystery that is set up. That all is fiction.
Yes.
Yes.
So, as the reader experiencing the three characters first, Lisa's name is spelled wrong. It's Leesa. It should be Lisa.
We'll
uh,
fix it for the next printing.
um, you saw um, multiple perspectives, right, from each of their characters, but really, it was one truth,
Yes.
right, that was present in the book. So you see kind of the complexities of their friendship, them getting older. But you also talked about you as the partial main character being in an environment where you really kind of saw how race and class kind of intersect in different ways. What do you hope readers will walk away with um after
Mhm.
reading how, and race is such a hard topic, and
Yeah.
I'm in the US, and so it's just a whole vibe going on right now. But
We
what
we
is
have that vibe too here.
well, you know what? I guess because our news is so flooded, honestly, the only time we hear about Canada is when there's something to do with a tariff. And I think some people are like, what is this tariff? We haven't really heard about it before until recently, and it's a whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you hope that the reader will walk away after reading
Yeah.
about the racial tension at this private school? And did your father have to pay for this school, by the way?
He did. He did. I'm still apologizing to the man for that. But anyway, um, so I think the first thing I always want people to get out of a novel is like a good read. You know, I pay a lot of attention to the prose and to having, you know, my books be page turners and interesting and all of that. But in terms of the issue around race, I think that I just want books to reflect the realities in which we live. And so maybe it's going to be a reflection for people who are sharing some of these experiences. And if they don't share this experience, maybe it illuminates it helps them understand a little bit more what the experiences are of BIPOC folks. Um, and some of it is like really subtle stuff, right? Like there's some pieces where Zahabia is meeting some of the kids who are going to be her good friends that year, and she totally, you know, says the wrong thing to the indigenous character, and she doesn't really understand the more politicized Caribbean kids what they mean about race, and so like there's a lot of ways that everybody is learning through this process. So maybe that's part of also the message. It's also a time, you know, adolescence is a time where you kind of think you know everything. The world is wide open for you, but you are also really vulnerable and you don't have all the information you need that, or that you eventually glean after decades and decades. And, you know, I still feel like I'm learning. Um, so yeah, I think part of it is just to have people talking and thinking about the issues that are present in our society and
Mhm.
still present. Right, this book was it's set in the 80s, but you know, 40 years later, what has changed? Some things, and what hasn't.
Absolutely. Um, my grandfather just died a couple of weeks ago,
I'm so sorry.
and thank you. But he was 104 years old. And so he would quite frequently call us on the phone or FaceTime us on the iPhone. And he was constantly telling us these stories. And some of my family members were like, why does he keep telling us these same stories over and over again? But what I came to realize was that he didn't want those stories to die with him. He wanted them to live on well beyond, him no longer being here. And so I think when you tell a story that we can read, where it could be something that we experienced or we didn't experience, but I think it's important for all of us to be exposed to how others are feeling, because we make all of these assumptions
Mhm,
about people who don't look like us.
mhm.
And as a person who is in healthcare, one thing I know for sure, we all have 2 kidneys typically, right? We all have the same organs. If you die, you're gonna die. Everything internally is the same, and I think that's something that's lost, and we lose this people element of our country, our world, and it's so sad because we are much more alike than we
Mhm,
are different. But it's
mhm.
like the differences are highlighted on steroids, and it's so sad. And it's like, what can we do to um be more
Mhm.
empathetic? What
Yeah,
can we do to heal things that have been done to us,
yeah.
by us, so that we can move forward and live happier lives?
Yes. And reading helps, right? Like I have so often learned about experiences that are not my own through reading, histories that are not my own through reading. It's a great way to be really immersed in a story and a reality. And I do hope that my books, because this is how I've learned, I hope my books are doing the same for other people. And I think we can build empathy because, you know, I might not actually meet the characters in your book or some or my books, right? But if I can meet them through 300 pages, well, that's a lot of fun, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
earlier, I mentioned to you that this is just me, Lisa, Lisa, would love to see um, the book turned into a film or, you know how they do those, what do you call it?
Mhm. I
Series.
Yeah.
Um, who would you want if this were to happen? Who would you want to play one of those three main characters?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure because they are young and like I am a little bit bad at pop culture, but can I tell you who I'd want to have to make the film for me?
Yes.
Mira Nair, who is Zoran Mamdani's mom. She's a filmmaker. She's made so many beautiful films about, many of them about South Asian realities, right? I would love it if she directed. So we're going to put that out to the universe. If she were to direct this, that would be so, so great. Um, yeah, I'm not sure about who would act in it. I have to think about that because I'm not good at that. Yeah.
Well, but you know what? That's could be part of your vision for bringing it to life
Yeah.
if you choose to do so. Um, and the reason why I think a film or a short series would be really beneficial is that each girl in the book is experiencing privilege in some
Mhm.
shape, form, or fashion,
Yeah.
um, belonging,
Mhm.
right? Um, there's a power, to me, there was like a power struggle going on. And to see that play out on screen, I think would be very helpful for young people to perhaps understand what they're experiencing, um, how complex friendships and life are, and how you grow through those things and become an adult and move
Mm.
forward.
Yeah, I would love that as well. Um, I also think another piece, maybe there's another message in the book that I really want, particularly young women, to be able to understand is that vulnerability piece. So, um, one of the characters, Lisa, is guarding a secret of um, violence that is happening to her. And I won't say by which kind of person or who, but it's somebody who is older. And she's hiding the secret very, very well. And so, what does come up in the book is the issue of sexual grooming, how sometimes, particularly lonely, vulnerable girls can end up kind of under the influence of people who are abusing their power. And we know that these things do happen in schools quite a bit. And my belief as well about boarding schools is that there's a different kind of vulnerability because parents are far away and can't pay attention in the same way. One of the characters, the newbie teacher, is a residence monitor. So she is a residence monitor for something like 30 girls. There's just no way that you can supervise so many girls and make sure that they're safe. So I also just wanted to kind of talk about that so that if that is a reality that is happening for a young person or that has happened for a young person, it's also reflected back to them. I think it can be quite healing, right, to see some of those kinds of experiences on the page too.
Absolutely. When you talked about the resident's mom being responsible for 30 girls, I actually just kind of, I don't want to say saw my life flash before my eyes, but my oldest daughter, who is 33, is special needs. And since she was 7, she has lived away from home,
Mhm,
and so she's nonverbal,
mhm,
at 33 physically, mentally, she's 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 in different areas. And so one of the things that I have to take to bed with me every night is if somebody is doing something inappropriately to her.
mm,
And the fact that she can't tell me
right. Oh
because
my goodness, your
she's
heart.
nonverbal, she doesn't hear.
Mhm,
So that's something that I pray about it all the time, asking God to protect her in that space. They do provide great care to her, but unfortunately, in those confined settings, you always have bad actors, and it's just, it's just a
Yes.
reality.
Yes. Oh, may she be protected. Yeah.
Got a lot of people praying for her. So,
Mm,
she definitely, now she's a little feisty. So if somebody was
good.
bothering her, she probably could fend for herself.
Good.
So we're almost out of time, but I have one more question I
Sure.
wanted to ask you. So when you were writing the three characters, which one challenged you the most?
Yes, I think the character that was most similar to me was more the most challenging. There's a way that writing characters that are very different are just super fun, and you can be more playful. Whereas I was really thinking about, okay, so I'm fictionalizing Zahabia, so there's a way that kind of creates this super conscious, like self consciousness around it. The other thing that was challenging was, while writing her, I came to like glance just a little bit more at what it was like to be that age. And I've gone to therapy, and I've dealt with lots of different things in my life, but I don't think that I've actually thought that much about that period in my timeline. And so she brought up so much for me, which is good and bad, but she was the challenging one for me. Lisa was so much fun to write because it's so fun to write a mean girl.
But I'm not a mean girl.
Yeah, yeah. And even
um,
even the young teacher, that was a lot of fun to write because that was experience so different from my own. Mhm.
wow. So I'm willing to bet that writing about part of a fictional version of you was more healing than you had anticipated.
Yes.
And I think a lot, and I'm not a therapist, but I do a lot of reading about just different things. And I think that a lot of times, and I actually said this in a speech that I gave recently, a lot of times we file things away in the do not recall folder of our life.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that from an intergenerational perspective, that we cannot heal things if we don't reveal them, if we just, keep them away. I think back in the day, my parents grew up with the mindset of what happens in this house stays in this house. Um, some things they just would take to the grave. No, nobody's ever gonna know. And I think it has had an impact on subsequent generations.
Of course. Yeah. Of course.
And there's research to prove it because I've
Yeah.
read it.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
because I have nothing else better to do in life but to but one of the things I say often, reading saved me.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
saved me from um going to places that I didn't need to be in, right,
Mhm.
mentally. And so it saved me and helped me really learn more about myself.
Yeah. It saves us from isolation, right? Because we realize that we're not alone, that this human experience is has more commonalities than differences. And if we're struggling, other people have struggled too and are struggling today. We're not unique in that way.
Yeah, so my desire is that we will start to realize that it's okay to not be okay. You're not the only person that has gone through it. Somebody else has gone through it and is on the other side. And so can you if you're willing to do the work.
Mm, hmm.
So very important.
Yeah.
So we are almost out of time, and I would love for you to do two things. One, tell everyone where they can find you out in the cyberspace. And one of the things I love about this podcast is that I've had an opportunity to meet authors outside of the United States, which is
Yes.
so cool. But there are so many stories out there, and I just hope that I am 100 years old still interviewing different authors, so that when we're all no longer here, others can hear about these different stories. So, where
Mhm.
can everyone find you? And then the other thing is, um, any final parting words you want to say about the beauty of us, which I feel like is about human connection and sometimes the lack
Yeah.
thereof, but
And finding home and finding your way through difficulties, through connection. I can be found on Instagram. That's probably the easiest place. I also have a website, farzanadoctor.com. Um, and the book is also available as an audiobook for people who enjoy that. I love audiobooks and also ebooks. So yes, um, thank you so much for having me on your show. It was a fun conversation.
yeah. So now I have one question since you mentioned the audiobook. Are
Mhm.
you reading the audiobook?
No, it ended up being a contract through Audible, so there wasn't the opportunity to do that. They kind of do their own thing. I have had other audiobooks where I've done some of the narration, and that's like such a fun thing.
It is fun, and I
Mm.
have found with me just reading my next book that I'm gonna publish, um, I'm so emotional when I'm reading it to Zoom, right? And I'm really thinking about what do I want the reader to experience? And I know if I'm feeling it, they're probably going to feel it as well. And how can I be a part of their journey towards, just being able to navigate life a little bit easier?
Mm, yes.
So, all right. Well, thank
Thanks
you
again.
so much for being here. Everyone, I just finished chatting with Farzana Doctor, author of The Beauty of Us. Until next week, you guys stay safe and we'll see you on our next episode. Thank you.